every single week and go, Tia Marie, how do you do this without being paid? And I said, because I'm not getting paid. That's number one. I'm not getting paid. When I do speaking engagements, I charge. When I go sit on a panel, I charge. When I go to support a candidate, I'm going to help raise them money, and I charge a legislative lobbying fee. Why in the hell would I help somebody raise money and not make sure I also have what I need to help that candidate along? Let's be clear. This is work. We have the opportunity to change what is happening in our community. Is it going to be fast change? Probably not, because there's a lot of resistance. But can we be effective if we stay the course? I have some fights I've been in for 18 years in my district. I have some fights I've been in for 2 years in my district. The issues that I've been able to coalesce the most support around are usually the things that get passed and moved along a lot faster. The things that I struggle to still get folks along with may take a little bit longer, but I never wavered. Never wavered. I started in the long haul. I planned to be in it until I saw the changes that I wanted to see. And we have to begin with the end in mind. We have to begin understanding that from jump. We have to begin understanding that some of these fights are going to take longer, and some of these fights can be faster if we're able to coalesce people around it. But I don't want the folks who do this work to have to do it alone. Which one of y'all that aren't doing any work yet, waking up to go find those people? Find those organizations. There are organizations in your community that are working on expungement. There are organizations in your community working on exoneration of wrongfully incarcerated folks. There are organizations that are helping to put funds on people's accounts while they're in prison. But you had a latte this morning, a $7 latte. Are we willing to make the sacrifice? Because that's what we really have to be honest about. Are we willing to make the sacrifice? And what does that look like? I believe we can by making just a few tweaks in our life. You don't have to alter everything in your life. It's not saying that you've got to go out and be an activist. It's saying pick your lane and pick your role and make sure it's effective. You know, I stopped watching the news many, many years ago. Actually, I stopped watching when, and I don't know if even Chanel remembers this, but I was in the hotel industry at the time, and I met one of the gentlemen who worked for Nielsen Company. They're the company that does all of the ratings trackings for like every single program, cable programming. They actually now currently they do social media as well, but back then social media was not as prevalent. It was like 92, 93, and it was just kind of coming on. I think at the time we only had web pages, not like full, World Wide Web. That was just kind of getting started. And I found out that all of these companies, I said, how in the world does anybody know? Like when you hear something that says, 40 million people watch the Super Bowl from all over the globe, or 25 million people watched, the BET Awards. I'm like, how do they know? Who's tracking this? Well, this is the company that tracks that. And one of the things that I learned is that how they came about was the news organizations. They created this watching tracking system. And they did it in the late 50s when they realized that television was a monetizable avenue, right? That as much as they wanted information and news and all of that to come out, that television was relatively new and they wanted a way to track and monetize that, right? I know we talk about monetization today as a more modern type of concept, but this is not brand new. From the movies to television, there were folks who wanted to monetize our viewing. And the news organizations were the first to sort of make sure that that was happening. And in doing so, they started to shift the news for the purpose of those ratings and the purpose of that viewership. When I learned that in the early 90s, because I really did not understand that as a young person, it started to make me understand that we have not watched anything that has been news since news ever was news, if that makes sense. And so I immediately started to disassociate any of my viewership to those things, including some of the television programs that come on, including like awards programs and all of that. But anyway, I digress. I say that to say, we are spending, the average American right now, it says to be spending 6 to 8 hours a day watching news. It's the one thing we watch the most of over all other programming. And if that's the one thing we watch more than any other programming, and it's the most untruthful thing that happens to be what we watch, even more than the things like the scripted and unscripted television, then we should be asking ourselves, why are we spending so much time watching that? And if we would trade those hours, because that was the trade I made, I traded those 6 to 8 hours, not in front of the television, not watching news, not even, watching some of the snippets of news. And I traded just those 6 to 8 hours in a day to community work. The first thing I saw was that I started to be fully aware of what was really going on in my community. Not what the news told me was going on in my community, which is lies and misdirection and focusing on all the wrong things, but what was actually going on. It also gave me an opportunity to coalesce with the very people that those things were harming. I also found out that energy into the very thing that was happening in the community helped to educate me on what was needed in the community and who were the players to actually affect the things that were needed. So if you are willing not even to take the full 6 to 8 hours that you might watch the news or spend on social media, and actually trade one at a time, trade 1 hour, one of those hours per month over the course of 8 months, and see how you can be more highly effective in your community, I guarantee you by the second month, you will already start to see results. I have no doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. If you make it your business in the next 30 days to seek out 5 organizations that align with your beliefs and your values, align with your beliefs and your values. Don't need to go look for the ones and stop the ones that don't. That'll be a waste of your energy. Go find the ones that do align with your beliefs and your values. Find out what that leadership, what that organization needs from you as a supporter. It might be dollars, it might be time, it might be phone banking, it might be changing policy, it may be going to do legislative action. You find the lane that works for you, but you have to be pro something. You have to be. I am extremely disappointed in people who can't tell me what they're pro anything. People who have been so disengaged that to me, you are just an amoeba. You're just a gray mass that just takes up oxygen, sunlight, and takes up space. Because what is needed out here is extremely real. We just watched nationally, yet again, another Black man literally live and in living color have his life taken. And then some of us this morning went and got another latte. Some of us this morning started talking about stats on a football game coming on Monday. Some of us this morning, because we have become so desensitized, moved on to the next thing. And to me, while I am fully aware of how the desensitization of the loss of Black life has become a norm in this country, we need to matrix ourselves out of this. We need to take a reality pill and start to see what our Zion really looks like. I will not watch another person die live and in living color and then move on to the next thing. None of us should. And if you're capable of doing that, you should be asking yourself two questions. Where can I go seek post-traumatic stress support and syndrome because you are woefully desensitized and having PTSD? Or where is my humanity, where my heart and my mind and my soul used to be? Because they no longer exist and I must be a tin man or tin woman. I must have lost every aspect of my humanity because I was so easily able to move on to the next thing. Racial trauma, particularly anti-Black racial trauma, is coming to us live and in color on television on a regular basis. You can almost schedule it to your clock. You can almost schedule it to your calendar. It is coming to us over and over and over again. And we are only as outraged as the amount of time it takes us to change the damn channel. We shake our head in despair and disgust. And we are not moved to action beyond that disgust. Welcome, Yaya. Welcome, JoJo. What I'm trying to do, though, I'll reset the room. I am your host, Tia Marie. My lovely co-host, Chanel, is also here with us, and I appreciate her support and helping me to monitor the room, so I just want to lift that. I also wanted to just have us take a breath and a beat and take a minute to just recognize that there's another way. There's another way for us to show up. And I looked at this earlier in the room, so I want to be clear. There are many, many, many thousands of us who know this, who get this. I am not talking to y'all. There are some of y'all who have sacrificed beyond all recognition of what a person should have to sacrifice. You have already volunteered as tribute. What I am centering tonight is not your work, because you are making tracks. You are showing up in a way that most people won't understand what your sacrifice has actually been as an activist, as an advocate, as a leader, as a person that affects change. Most people will not understand what it has cost you to do so, to volunteer as tribute, to take that responsibility, to take that sacrifice. So when I am talking today, I am not talking about you. You have instituted blueprints. You have navigated spaces without help. And I commend you, and I celebrate you, and I center you. And I center your work and your effectiveness. The folks I want to talk about in the blueprint today are those who are for the movement, who believe in what the goals are, who believe that they understand that we have to be vigilant, but who have not made the commitment or taken on the responsibility to move to the next stage. Who are not seeking out those very same community leaders on a regular basis to say, how can I help? What can I do? How do I help you? How frequently do you need the help? Where are the gaps? I will try, JoJo. You got to know that one thing, I am actually woefully aware of how to use Twitter effectively. So I don't even know if I can change it without shutting this entire space down. So I hear you, brother. I love you. You are right. But I don't even know how to do that. I am sorry. I have not even been on Spaces for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. I will say this though, which is I am for lineage-based reparations. So this room is being recorded. I am of the mindset and of the spirit of lineage-based reparations. I think I had to shorten it to reparations because I think we were running out of so many, I think it's like only so many characters they give you. And so I don't know. I'm really trying not to touch the screen because I have accidentally closed spaces doing that in the past, and I wouldn't want to do that. So I'll reset the room that I am for lineage-based reparations. I am for and supporting folks that are foundational Black Americans, and I am hoping to create a space that acknowledges the work that we need to have done going forward, how we can get through that work going forward, and what the blueprint might look like. So I started out by definitely lifting the work of those who are doing what they can, how they can, who have made ultimate sacrifices in which to further their community, who are leaving footprints and tracks, who do advocate, show up, don't miss a beat, but who are under supported by those very citizens that they advocate for. I'm talking to those citizens today. I'm talking to the folks who might be in that group of 6 to 8 hours a day that watch the news, sit on the, hear what's happening, but then are not moved to put their tennis shoes on and go out the door and stand with some of those people that are making the sacrifice. So I will pause and invite, and I'm only going to do one speaker at a time, because I noticed that if we have multiple speakers, it seems like if somebody comes off or we get background noise, it's a little harder to manage. So I'm going to do one speaker at a time. If I have any hands raised, thank you for coming into the room. I saw somebody, I don't know if I saw a couple people actually, but maybe they have dropped off. If you raise your hand, if there's something that you would like to add to the conversation, please feel free to do so. If I do not see any hands, I will continue to talk. But I will say that right now, part of the blueprint, in my opinion, has been that we have to look at education. I thought about this pretty much the whole day to try to figure out what are we all centrally fully aware of, intrinsically aware of, what are we all tied to one way or another. There is no other institution. I thought about even churches and religious, but then some people opt out of that. I thought about the financial aspect, but some people are not participating in financial aspects of that industry. I thought about every single industry other than maybe employment being second, and really education was the unifying aspect of all Americans. We either have gone to school ourselves, have children in school right now, or are getting ready to prepare for children to be in school. But at some point, every American, for the most part, small groups that haven't, has gone through education in one way or another, an educational institution. That I believe that we have a unique opportunity to coalesce around the educational space. And the second reason why I believe that we can is because when we talk about all of the adults that either believe one thing or another, or adults who believe in their ability to do one thing or another, or what is fundamentally happening in our community, that indoctrination of white supremacy culture starts at the most critical developmental stages of our youth. And then 18 years, sometimes 19, 20, depending on how early your children started in education or how early you as a child started in education, that programming takes place over an 18-year period. Yet we do not dominate that space. But our children, ourselves, have all had to go through it and are either deprogramming ourselves from that miseducation or deprogramming our children and trying to give an alternative understanding about the way of life, but are still not countering what our children are learning in that space. And I know in the 70s, maybe late 70s, I know here in Michigan after the riots, it became glaringly apparent that our parents wanted us to understand more about our history, more about where we came from. But their thought was, well, if the school teaches X, we'll teach this at home. And that is extremely critical. But imagine if they had been equally as aggressive in the school space, how we would have today a whole generation of folks who think completely differently about their experience in white supremacy culture. but we did not put those kind of efforts. We are now seeing 18, 20, last 30 years of unbelievable indoctrination in white supremacy culture in our school spaces. And we are also seeing in school spaces where LGBTQ and all these other trans, cross sectional, whatever you want to call it, all of these other folks now dominate and hold that space. That I want us as FBA to really drill down into a unifying space that I believe we all can understand and have our own lived experience, to find that as a space of coalescing. It will do two things. It will minimize the 61% of our kids that experience racial trauma in our education system. It will also give us the opportunity to be highly effective in what the next generation is learning as they come out to be adults into this space that we're going to hopefully create for them, that no longer has white supremacy culture. And I also believe that as we talk about how we can engage and protect and bring people together in our community, I do believe we have the opportunity to coalesce around education. That is my opinion. I'm sure there are other thoughts and processes, but and I'm opening up the floor for what your other thoughts are. But I believe the first step in the blueprint is coalescing around what are our kids hearing in education, how are they being exposed in the educational space, and how we engage in that has to be understanding school policy, understanding our children's handbook, understanding their discipline policy, understanding how much money in the school budget. I believe we need to understand every key central office player that is determining policy, every school board member, how they got into that school board, how do we get them out if they no longer represent who and what we are. If they're not making policy to help protect our children, we need to be in school board meetings. We need to download that school packet and that agenda every single time that it is getting ready to come down the pike. These are the blueprints. These are the steps. This is how we build community coalition. I want to pause and just say welcome to the room, Lisa, Tia, thank you for still being here. Jojo, thank you for your support and always being here. And I see IG, and I cut off part of the name. IG Ra, I can only see part of your name, so I'm sorry. Welcome to the space. You're welcome to raise your hand. I'm happy to have different viewpoints and other input. My name is Tia Marie. I'm in Michigan, so I will always try to speak from a space of Michigan. And I'm open to hear what is happening in your spaces, in your town, your county. I hope it looks less bleak than my town, my county, for Black folks. And I wanted to move us away from the negative spaces where we are definitely pointing the fingers and talking about what group we're not with and which group we don't support and which group, that's fine, in somebody else's space. Oh, hey, right. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Hello, Raheem. I only saw part of your name in a little part of the chat. I am not versed on Twitter or Twitter spaces, so please forgive me in how these spaces work and how to manage this page. I'm going to invite my sister to come and help me to manage this space, because I really do not know, and I don't want to close the page by accident. But welcome, and I thank you guys. The other aspect of our blueprint, beyond our children, we have got to look at our police reform. And that space doesn't start at just protesting out in front of the police department. Police reform actually I keep making you the co-host. Let's see if I can do it now that you're a speaker. I think maybe I couldn't. So I'm sending you a co-host link, sister. I think maybe you had to be speaker first. Hopefully I did not lose the space. Okay. Let's see. Guys, please forgive me. Just give me 1 second here. There we go. Raheem, I think I opened you up to speak. I hope it took. Did it take? Try to come off mute. Okay,
it made me a speaker.
Okay. I'm trying to make Chanel my co-host. So just give me one pause so I can try to make her co-host. I'm sending you a co-host invite again. Okay, go ahead. You can come off mute and speak while she figures out that part.
All right, peace and Black Power family. This is Raheem. You wanted me to speak, or you was waiting for someone else to speak?
Oh, no, no. I thought that I saw you request a
Oh
speaker,
yes.
so I was letting you speak. Yep, go
Oh,
ahead.
oh, okay, okay. No, I just tuned in to what you was talking about, and my documentary actually deals with the school to prison pipeline, and we talk about how children, they don't actually drop out of school until parents drop out of their lives. And that was something that we were seeing. We were seeing that, we talk about Black youth and particularly boys, and how they're more than 3 times likely to be suspended than their counterparts. But what a lot of people don't know is that Black girls are 6 more times likely to be suspended than white girls. So there's a disproportionate, when it comes to suspension, when it dealing with the school to prison pipeline, but also as you mentioned about running for office and running for school board, right? Everything starts with the school board, because from the school board, they're the ones who put the superintendent in place. The superintendent is the one that actually hires the principals. Here in Atlanta, the Gwinnett superintendent makes almost $500,000 a year. This is a superintendent, and he makes almost $500,000 in 1 year. So these positions that are given, most of it starts with the school board. And most school boards, if you look at it, there's always parents that started out in the PTA. So that's why it's very important for parents to be active and be a part of the PTA, so you could be a part of the school board and eventually be in control of who's going to be the superintendent, who also hires the principals. So it's not hard for us, especially if you live in an area where we are in control and we have the numbers. It's just about getting the right people in there and taking over. And that's what we got to do. And with that, I'm going to land my jumbo jet, as they say. And I'm just here, man, listening, learning, and vibing with the FBA family.
We appreciate that. You're absolutely right. Thank you for lifting that. I'm glad that because that was another part, which is to talk about how do we get to school board. School board, the path through that is the PTA, PTO, depending on what your school may call it. And that is correct. It is finding out where those positions are. Any parent can join the PTA, PTO. The membership fee is $10 a year. That's all that it costs. And the PTA and the PTO are a national nonprofit and policy advocacy group. Look up your PTO and your PTA, look up your local chapter, look up your state chapter, and look up the national chapter. They have agenda items, they have lobbyists, they have folks who write policy. That is going to teach you a lot about how things happen in your district. So I'm very glad that you lifted that, Raheem. And then, as you mentioned, the superintendents, there is a document that you can get. I believe it's from your school board of education for the state that lists the salaries of every superintendent in your state. It doesn't list the assistant superintendent, but it does list the superintendent, and Raheem is 100% correct. Most superintendent positions, depending on what city and state. So if you're thinking about major metropolitan areas and suburban areas, Most of those, so this is not rural and Appalachian Mountains, and we're not even getting to the west side of the states like California and Arizona. But on the eastern seaboard and straight down to about the middle of the United States, most superintendent salaries are definitely over $100,000 a year. Some of them, like here in my county, most of our superintendents make anywhere between $400,000 and $600,000 a year, whilst the teachers are being paid 65, maybe 80,000, maybe 90,000 if they happen to be highly accredited and degreed. So it is a highly sought after position. The board and the community, so the board recognizes the nominees of the school board, and then the people of that district get to vote. Most school board positions to run only cost about $7,000 in funds that get raised, about $7,000 to $10,000. Most school board positions go unchallenged. Most school board positions don't require anything other than that you are a U.S. citizen and a resident of the district in which you want to be on the school board. Not every school board even does that. You must be 18 years or older. You don't even have to have children in the district. It is preferred, but it is not a requirement. So actually running for school board is about the lowest hanging fruit of positions, second to maybe boards and commissions, which we'll talk about that too. But it is one of the lowest hanging fruit of ease of access to get into that position. Most school boards only take, so you have some districts where you might need 15,000 votes. And let's say a district that has maybe, I don't know, let's say over 100,000 citizens, you might be looking at 15,000 is about the average. But most districts are under 50,000 people in most cases. And I'm talking about this district, not the whole city, because you can have multiple school districts in one city. So we're just talking about one particular school district. And in order to get voted in, you only need, in most cases, 3,000 to 5,000 votes. Okay. So when we talk about how easy it is to, and you only need $100 in some states to file, or you need a certain number of signatures. Some states have 100 signatures. Some states say you need 1,000 signatures. It just depends. That number changes because we have different voting laws in different states. But it is a very accessible way to get involved and actually start to direct policy and direct the outcomes of, like Raheem said, school to prison pipeline, discipline, disproportionate discipline. Yes, ma'am, in just one second. But to access those things that determine who the superintendent will be and what their ideology will be and how they will bring that ideology to the entire staff and what they will demand and request and hold accountable to the entire staff. So the school board is why I believe that it is the school engagement and school participation and school politics and policy are the most accessible, engaging space to start this coalition around what we hope the goal will be, which is eradicating anti-Black racism, right? And white supremacy culture. Okay, so let me just see who I have here. One moment, I'm going to pause. I see that there's a request to speak. Hold on. I'm going to let Chanel go because she is my co-host that wants to interject. And then I had someone else I thought that requested to speak, but
Yeah,
okay.
I got him in. Willie Dynamite, I got you. I just wanted you to touch real quickly, but I want to say this first. Y'all, listen. If you want to get your pen and paper out and take some notes, this would be a great time to do that. Tia Marie is a huge wealth of information. She's almost like an encyclopedia. Okay, she talks a lot of fast, real quick, because so much information in her head that she has to get out. So if you guys have any questions, please, you can put it in the chat. You can also request and she will answer them for you. She is extremely knowledgeable in what she's talking about. So I definitely want to put that out there. Secondly, Tia Marie, when we were talking earlier, when you were saying that the parents kind of waited too late, because we're not involved in our school district and how the kids were getting expelled, from school. Can you just touch on that just a little bit, and then you can just go on? But you have to do it right now. But I just wanted to say that too. When Raheem was talking about this superintendent, it kind of brought me to that conversation that we had earlier.
Okay, thank you. And I do apologize, you guys. I do talk very fast. I apologize. And I tend to lose my voice because I talk literally all day. So please interject, ask me questions, whatever you need. I do see a hand up. Let me see. Do I just take it? What do I need to do?
I just, Willie, you can speak. Willie.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Willie, come off mute.
How's everybody doing? Peace, everybody.
Racer Bo, that's you. Hey,
Yes,
Racer.
ma'am. How you doing? Yes, ma'am. My original account got shut down, so this is the new account. I appreciate everybody following me. You know how I give it up, I follow you back. I didn't want to hold up the space, and I didn't want to curve the direction of the room, but I came in here to let the brothers and sisters know that the murderer of our good brother Jordan Neely has been identified. The suspect at hand, his name is Daniel Penny, also known as Danny Penny, a Marine out of West Islip, Long Island, New York. I just wanted to share that information, and with Sisters Tia's, Maria, I'd like to put the information in the Jumbotron, and then I'll yield my time.
So thank you, Willie. I don't know how to put it in the Jumbotron. So if you
I'll
do,
put it up there for you. I just wanted your permission.
Okay, there you go. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tia.
Thank you for the information. Yeah, I'm not as versed on Twitter. I literally try not to touch the screen. But thank you for lifting that and for just giving us a pause and just a reset. So thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I cannot watch and will try not to watch another live and in color broadcast of how we are being executed out here. It's just so I just want to pause and just take that moment in. I do want to thank a couple folks for being in the room. Let me just see here. Let me go. How do I get back to? Oh, there we go. I want to thank. I have Lisa in the room. Oh, I have Nikki the God. Hello, Nikki. How are you, dear? I haven't talked to you in a while. How are you doing? I got Raheem. I got JoJo. I got, let's see. Oh my goodness. Oh, Marcel, how you doing, brother? I got Lisa. I got the midwife. I thank you all for being here. I appreciate you all. Oh my gosh, I did not know if I would have 5 people in here, let alone the people that I have. So I'm very honored. You all know I don't get on here very often, so I just wanted to take a moment. I've been out here in these streets, making sure that some of the policies that we need to get done here in Michigan, particularly around reparations and around, we have an education bill that we are pushing through the state right now. We got 83 counties in Michigan, so we are getting ready to have a march coming up on May 11th. And so I've been planning that, been doing some other local things. We did a Black History tour in the city of Detroit this past weekend. So forgive me for not being on Twitter, but I've been trying to, do some things. But I also wanted to, hey, Perry, I've been trying to make sure that we are talking about how we can move forward, how we can affect change, and what that actually looks like step by step, what that looks like, just in a little bit of, snippets, nothing major tonight. And I'm certainly open and hopeful for anybody that wants to, connect after the fact. So please let me know. I normally share what I do. I share it so that we can be effective in what we do, and so that folks feel less intimidated, less, kind of like, oh, I don't know if that's what I want to do, and that you are more likely to lift into the responsibility and the accountability of what change looks like. Because I think those are 2 key elements that are missing as we talk about activism and as we talk about how we are going to actually affect change in our community. Being accountable to the change that you want to see is one of the most resistant aspects of our movement. I also want people to understand that there are multiple levels there. You're going to see activists who, as I mentioned before, are literally making the ultimate sacrifice. They don't sleep, they don't eat, they travel, they spend their own money, they try to get resources, they try to, go and knock on doors and go find people that will support what they're trying to do. And I want us to flip it. I want us to be the kind of citizens that go seeking them out, that spend our entire month finding 4 or 5 organizations and 4 or 5 candidates that do align with our beliefs and our constitution of how we function. Let's make their jobs that much easier. Let's find what our lane is. Maybe you're good in accounting and you can help somebody that is running for office stay on top of their accounting and on their treasury work and on their reporting and their filing. That is one of the hardest things for a candidate to do. Maybe you can find out who that person is in your community that is trying to expunge people's records and see if you can't go and help phone bank for an hour. I found that I can get through 40 calls in an hour if I phone bank and help out a group that I believe in their efforts. I can do that sitting at home on my cell phone, call 40 people and call it a night after 1 hour. And I've helped share the message and share what's necessary out to 40 more people that person may not have been able to reach or that organization couldn't share the good word with. You want to know why these other groups and other organizations win? It is that they're willing to volunteer as tribute for the sacrifice. They're willing to take on the responsibility of their community. They say, my community runs through my veins. What is necessary and needed, I'm willing to do my part. And your part, if it is not leaving tracks in your neighborhood, you're not there yet. You're not there yet. You can get there. I believe in you. I believe that you are capable. I believe that your heart and your mind want to do more. You just have not seen what doing more looks like because we are woefully missing the kind of organization and coalescing that's necessary. I'm not going to say we're not capable of organizing. We are, but we need people that are going to go knock on the doors of the activists. Let me put it to you that way. I want to see those people go knock on the doors of the activists, knock on the doors of the people that are already doing this work and say, what can I do to help you today? Because the work's been done. We don't have to go create anything. But we have to be willing to take responsibility for our part. Chanel, I think hands are up. For some reason, I'm not seeing. I think somebody did have. Are you seeing it? Okay, are you the one? Okay, because I'm like, I see it for a second. So are you doing the letting them in? Okay, good.
Yeah, and
If you can do it,
real
please.
quick shout out to Marcel because I was talking about Marcel earlier. This so
Oh
funny.
yeah,
'cause I was
Marcel
talking about
is
you
one of those
earlier,
people.
and you were saying, Marcel, how you getting out more in the streets and talking to people. And then when you were saying that the other day, and I was like, what's stopping me from doing the same thing? And it's not stopping me. I have to just go out there and actually do it because I know Tia Marie, really trying to figure out why aren't we moving a needle? Why don't we see more of our people in these spaces? Because you are all up in these spaces. How many boards are you actually on? 30,
29.
25,
29 boards. I'm on 2 school boards. I'm on the Board of Regents with one of the universities for the state. I am on 2 school boards. I am on 29 boards and unfortunately, and counting. I get asked to be on even more boards, but I usually go on board so that if there is grant funding or scholarship funding or whatever kind of funding, I can direct back to my community. And at this point, it's been almost $1 million over the last 8 years, which is not much. I get it, but I started learning along the way. So my beginning years were much more slim, but getting dollars directed into my community through policy and getting dollars lifted into the space so that our children don't have to experience as much racial trauma, so that they have voice and they have the resources and the kind of culture and environment that they need around them. And that is not just me alone. That is from coalescing with many, many people that believe in the same outcome and the same goals, and that want to help eradicate racism the way I am passionate about eradicating racism, and particularly anti-Black racism. And I center Black people, I center our goal, and I live relentlessly to see that through. And so our brother Marcel is another one.
And what are some of the pushbacks that you get? The fact that you actually do center Black people, and that's one of your main talking points in getting results for our children in the school district.
So one of the first things is that immediately all of the intersectionality questions start coming out. Well, what about this group? No, what about that group? And that's not just from the opposite sides of us. That is also within us. Most of my opposition tends to come from either us saying, well, don't talk about reparations. You know, we're not going to win on that, or we're not going to, you know, we got to figure out a way to say reparations without saying reparations. I hear a lot of that, and that's fine. That, you know, I'm not going to spend a lot of effort trying to convince somebody that don't want to have the conversation. But I will say where it is, and I don't mind that people have different thoughts and views, because their thoughts and views don't necessarily change anything. I am more concerned about those who are in charge of policy, who can, you know, direct dollars and effort and lobbying behind anti-Black policies. Now, those I will zero in on. And those are just going to be a fight, because we are not only fighting for the resource, but we're also fighting for the power of the position. And so for me, those are the most difficult spaces to be in, because we don't have, you know, when I talk about a presence and a footprint of, you know, I know that we're talking about ADOS and Friedman and FBA and all these other titles, but if you don't have an anti-Black presence and footprint in the space that is an existing space, like not a virtual space, if you don't have that footprint, if it's vapor when there's policy to be determined and dollars to be spent, if there's nothing but vapor in those spaces, then you will need to reevaluate what you're spending 6 to 8 to 9 hours of your time a day doing, or you need to go sit down somewhere and be quiet. Because a lot of these spaces, if you are not at the helm of dollars and policy, then being anti something else is not helping. You got to be as much or more pro what it is you do believe in order to affect change. And so I'm being reminded, Black Alpha Network, thank you for also being in the space. Please, you guys, raise your hand. I'm talking, so I can't see everything. I do have Chanel, my co-host, my lovely, beautiful co-host, that is going to make sure you come up on, and you can interrupt me at any time. I do not mind. Just put your hand up, come up on. You ain't got to wait till I finish my thought. Because I want all of the varying degrees, and I highly respect some of the people that have come into this space. Thank you. I was calling out everybody saying, let me just do a roll call. I got Black Alpha Network, I got Marcel, I got JoJo, I got Willie, I got Raheem, I got MF. I can't see the whole name. I got okay, thank you. I have more Tots. Can you see everybody's name?
Yeah, we got everybody. Okay. I appreciate everybody.
Okay.
But yes.
Lisa, Tia been with us since the beginning, and she's my namesake, so I love you, sister. I got Fanny, I got Maurice, I got Mr. Oh, let's see what comes up. Oh, I can't see. I see Mr. Black. Mr. Black. Okay, looks like Sheila or Sheila. Markel Prairie, y'all forgive me for brutalizing your partial names. I can't see that whole names. Oh, I see is it Perry? Diane, Miss J, I see DeMarco maybe, and Codester and Kid Gab. So that's only the parts I can see of your name. I got Nikki the God. Thank you all for being in here. The purpose of this space tonight And I'm Tia Marie. I'm in Michigan. I'm an activist and advocate for reparations, lineage-based reparations. I'm an advocate for, we have an education bill for preserving our history and our education in schools and protecting our students. I also lead the coalition for the Michigan End Racial Trauma in Schools. I'm part of, like I said, 29 different boards. I sit on 2 school boards. And so my goal tonight was to not only have a conversation about how we win and be able to provide what those goals and how we can coalesce around the goals, but what does that blueprint look like? I believe that the hesitation of some folks, maybe not, to engage in what is next or how do they get engaged is that they just don't know what the blueprint is. I believe that their hearts are in the right place. I believe they care about our community. I believe that they care about our children. I believe they would like to see the advancement and the thrivability of Black folk. What I believe is that they possibly, and I'm making space for it, they just don't see that path forward or that avenue forward. And rather than demean them or shame anybody for not being engaged, we get to hit that just like what is that one commercial that hits the easy button? We get to hit a restart button and start talking about what can you do tomorrow, which is what, Friday? What can you do starting Monday? How can you be of assistance to those who are already doing work in your community? How do you go seek them out? How do you go and like every week when I get paid, I don't know about you guys, but one is figure out how to get multiple streams of income, and maybe that's another show altogether. But the other is I already know every week how much I'm donating to somebody's campaign. Another week, I might donate to a charitable organization. Another week, I may be investing in somebody's business. I already know where my money is going to go every paycheck. My children, I have 2 daughters, 23 and 22. They know where their money is going to go. My daughter 2 years ago started a scholarship for her high school for students who might be struggling financially. Part of her money from her paycheck has to go for the scholarship in her name to help students that want to go to their next level after high school. It might be a trade school, they can use it, but I helped her create that. We have an endowment in my mother passed away in 2012. We created, so I put money into that endowment, which helps small businesses to get grants. If you do not know and have not planned out what your money is going to do in your community, that is another step. Which candidates are you going to support? The Democratic Party, and Marcel can speak to this, will not and has not supported Black candidates that believe in the same value system that we have been talking about for the last 2 decades as a coalition of people. They will not. Those candidates that either we have to groom or we have to pay to create and to get across the finish line, we have to be committed to making an investment. I don't care if it's $1 or $10. Nobody is joking with people when they say candidates need money. I don't want my candidate going into their own pocket. I already made that decision a long time ago. A candidate they still have to take care of their family. They still have to take care of themselves. I don't want them having to come out of their pocket. Being able to run is a community event, not an individual person's event. Being able to see somebody that volunteers as tribute to represent your community, and if you don't like that they are, you volunteer and you get the same support. When that person volunteers as tribute and I give them $20, $50, $100, $200, whatever I donate, I am donating because I just bought my $10 space into the space that they're going to go represent. I just paid $100 so they can go represent where I cannot be because I work on Friday or I have to take my kids to soccer on Saturday, but Bobby Joe is going to go and make sure that at that policy meeting, I'm represented. That's why I contribute to a candidate. Not because you're lining their pockets. Any dollar you give them, the only people that's doing the wrong thing with money and politics is the wrong people. When you curate and put the right person that you groomed, the person that you created in that spot, every investment you make is so they say the words and they say the purpose and they carry the message that you created. That's why you pay to get them across the finish line. And if you have not allotted how much of your income a month is to not only get your candidate in, support your candidate through the candidacy, get your candidate into office, and then sustain them there, because your money doesn't stop once they are there. You have to sustain them there, and then you have to protect the policy that they put into place. If your money is not allotted to preserve that space, then when you go on to any social media and complain about a thing you don't like in your community, please be quiet until you open your wallet. Do us a service, be kind, and please be quiet until you open your wallet. If you believe that Black businesses don't permeate your community, please be quiet until you're ready to open your wallet to sustain those Black businesses in your neighborhood, since they don't get loans and they don't get grants and they don't get support. If you are not flooding their business and getting your neighbors and your co-workers and your churches and your motorcycle clubs to go and make sure that the barbecue place on the corner and the hair salon and the boutique that sells clothes and the brother that makes sure that the right music is in the neighborhood and the financial investment organization and the people that want to do the architect that wants to build new houses, if you are not making sure that their business stays open by putting your $10 and knowing that you're going to put your $10, $50, or $100 into their business every month, don't complain about not having Black businesses in your community. Please do us a service and go sit down and be quiet. If you are not willing to make an investment, because I have learned one thing and one thing only. People make an investment, meaning give up their dollars or their time or their treasure or their talent to the thing that they actually want to see get done. If you are not willing to make that investment, you're not willing to take responsibility for what is happening or the change in your community, and we need you to go sit down because you're actually in the way. You can build an entire change of a community, one block at a time. Thank you, JoJo. Appreciate you, brother. One block at a time, one business at a time, one bank at a time, one financial institution and training, one school at a time.
Let me ask you a real quick question. I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, go ahead.
So if we're investing our dollars, right? What are we? So we have to like have a kind of contract with them. Like, how does that look? What does that look like? Like, okay, right? All nice Black area. Detroit is great. You know how Detroit is, but almost it's like 85%, between 80 and 85% Black.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like if we're investing our dollars into these businesses? I'm sure they're Black businesses, right? Like what kind of conversation would I have with them? Like, how does that work?
So one of the things that I do, and you know this, the moment I hear of a Black business opening, either somebody told me about it or I see it on social media or I see a television show that might talk about it or however I learn about that particular business. The first thing I do is I get them their information so that I can go visit them. I personally go visit them. I go to ask to speak to the owner, find out, what the situation. Are you a family? Is it, a husband and wife? Are y'all part of a co-op? Where is the root of this particular business? And as I'm learning that information, first of all, most Black businesses, or really any business for that matter, they're happy to share their story to the, best of their ability to share it, hopefully truthfully. But the other thing is that I ask them, and what do you need? So you're a Black-owned business that just opened up in my neighborhood. As I get to know who you are and I get to learn what your story is, it determines if my next question is, how can I help you? What do you need? I ask, what do you need? Because I may have a talent or a treasure, or I may be able to make an investment to that need. The other thing is that if I find that they are in alignment with the same beliefs that I have. They believe that there should be lineage-based reparations. They believe that the thrivability of a community lies within these dollars being able to show up in the community in a way that create more businesses. As I am having that understanding with them, I am making the next determination is, am I going to share their business with other people within my network? So that every space I go into and I say, you need somebody. So I just worked with a company that did the decorations for a baby shower that we hosted. We hosted a community baby shower, and I was looking for a Black caterer. I looked for a Black florist, a balloon artist, a decorator, somebody make the cakes, a space to have, like every aspect. I looked for a certain kind of Black business to put this whole thing together. And one of them was a new company I had not heard of. And I said, I want to give you my business, but I want to share your business with my networks. So I made sure that people that were following what we were doing with the baby shower were aware of the vendors that we were using, that we shouted them out. We made sure that day we talked about them. We made sure all the guests, because I did a little card for them to know who our vendors were. Some of them had sponsored parts of the event. Some of them had been paid for their parts of the event. I listed how much they were paid for the event so the people would know how affordable it was. So there are so many things that you can do to figure out how and where you're going to invest that dollar into that particular business. And what I tell people is that, and when I don't have money to invest, so there have been times when I'm like, wow, I really love your business, but I've given the money that I'm allotted for myself for this month, but I'm going to help you get dollars from all my friends. I know that this friend needs a lawyer. This friend over here asked me for a decorator too. I don't need decorating services, but I'm gonna make sure you get paid because my friend is looking for one. So I do a lot, and this, I do a lot of cross referencing so that we lift up those particular businesses that we know support and believe in our things. And what I ask for in return is, when it is time to invest in a candidate, I have banks that I've also, and credit unions that I've said, I need to open up a garden in a community that has a desert, a community that is not even on their radar. I need $50,000, $25,000 to build a community garden, because this is what will help the people that live in that neighborhood. We give out 1,100 backpacks every day. That is through sponsorships. So those same businesses that I help to bring money into are happy to sponsor something that we're trying to do in the community, because we have cross-sectioned those interactions and those relationships. So that's the long story to how to invest those dollars.
Yeah, guys, Tia Marie has such a huge range, a very large range information. She's like an encyclopedia. She's going to talk really fast. She goes through a lot of information. I would say, if you get your pens and paper out. Originally, we were talking about, the education system and how as Black Americans need to really, move forward in that area. And there's different ways on how to win at this game. Because as you know, if you all maybe know, you see other groups moving way past forward, right? And we are really lagging behind. And I feel like, and I said this before, guys, it's okay to acknowledge the truth. We need to get far ahead, and we need to move quickly, and it can be very overwhelming. And this is why we started this space, how to win. So what I'm going to do is, in my neighborhood, for that, I'm going to go to all the Black businesses like D-Loft. I think he's moving too, but
I know her. She just
she came. I'm going to go to the Black businesses in my area and ask them, what do we need, and how I can support. So that's number one. Thank you very much. So what's another step in education that we can do? That's huge.
So I know some people joined it a little bit early, so I'll just reset. One is you do need to join your PTO, your PTA. Those are the PTO and the PTA is from a national policy based, and most people don't realize that. They think the PTA is just the people that have, I don't know, the carnival at the school or whatever. The PTA is a policy advocating organization. The PTA, PTO, whatever your school may call it, your school may even have both. Join that organization. It's $10 nationally, $10 for the whole school year. And you have as many kids as you have in the district. That does, it's not determined by how many kids you have in the district. Once you pay to be a member, you are now part of this national organization. What is happening in that organization beyond the carnivals? So look beyond the carnivals. I'm not saying don't help with the carnivals and the teacher appreciation week. All of those things are very fun, and by all means participate in that. But I need you to get on the board of the PTO so that you know what is happening on the policy side. They actually endorse candidates and support candidates for school board. They actually help and put in their 2 cents to the school board for who is the superintendent in that district. They are also heavily involved with the educational foundation of that school. Education foundations were started during integration of schools. They were started as, and I'm going to forget the name of it. It was for not school vouchers. Oh, I can't think of the name of it. I'm sorry. But when white folks want to take their kids out of schools because they didn't want to integrate, they created educational foundations. They started pulling their money out of the schools, pulling their money out of every entity that was causing them to integrate. And they started to make sure that these educational foundations pay for the things in the district that the school as a state entity would not pay for. And so when the states were saying, if you don't integrate, you're not going to get your state funding, those education foundations started to be created as like endowments and trusts and nonprofits and private foundations in which to take the money and be able to put your kids with vouchers into private school, or what they called, I think they were called segregation schools or something along. I can't, maybe they weren't that explicit, but they were separate type of schools that you basically could determine how your kids went to school. This is before they got really, really classy and tried to now do redlining, which took care of the heavy lifting for them. But those education foundations still exist today. Some of them with the same original language for these separatist schools, but that's neither here nor there. If you go deeper, you'll find out what's actually in your educational foundation. I actually served on the board of mine here for 5 years and learned a lot of this. But those 3 entities, the Education Foundation, the school board, and the PTO or the PTA, and one more group which is attached to the courts, they call them youth assistants or community coalitions. It's like another group that is sanctioned by the county in partnership with the court. And you need to know that in your district, because a lot of people go to those entities thinking that they are a source of allyship and support and that they're there to help wrap around your family, but they can be slightly problematic as well too. And that may be another whole show just talking about breaking down education. But the reason why I lift that education is the unifying palette for all of us is either we ourselves have gone through school, we currently have children in school or had children in school, or we are about to put a child in school or put, ourselves go to further our education. School is the one institution that has the most impact on us for the longest period of time beyond employment. I wanted to kind of focus on employment, but some of us are in the employment sector in very different ways. So I can't necessarily say that that's as unifying as education is. I also picked education as a way to coalesce around how we win, is because two other reasons. One is that is where our Black children have to go, and it is the one area we don't dominate. In the culture, in the education, in what is being taught, we don't dominate. We are not at every single school board meeting. We are not reading every single agenda packet for the school board. We are not in every policy, DIA, curriculum, and ethics meeting that those school boards have to determine what happens to your children. We are not there when they're doing the superintendent interviews to determine who the next superintendent is going to be. We are not there when the curriculum and the central office folks are talking about what's the new student code of conduct for discipline. We're not there when the district is going every 5 years through their strategy meetings where they open it up to the community and 2 people are sitting in the audience. We are not there. We're not dominating those spaces. And so we need to be dominating because it has the most detrimental generational effect on our families. So if you don't know what level to engage in, start there. Start on the PTA, PTO, whatever parent organization your school has. And then the next level after that is school board. The reason why I pick school board is because, again, it is low-hanging fruit for getting involved, because the bare minimum requirement to be on a school board is that you have to be a U.S. citizen, 18 years or older, and in some cases, not all, because some school boards don't require this, you have to be a resident of the district that you're wanting to be on school board for. But at bare minimum, it's a very low-hanging fruit area to get in accessibly without a lot of experience. You don't have to have degrees and all of these other things. And you are, in most cases, voted in by the citizens of that community. Most school boards only need anywhere between 3,000 to about 5,000 votes in order to get onto a board, depending on how many people are choosing to run. That can vary. But I'm looking at a community that's maybe 50,000 residents or lower, maybe 60,000 or lower. The other thing is that in order to run on school board, you only need anywhere between $5,000 to about $10,000 to run. Now, what most candidates don't tell anybody, and this is where people are all jaded about the money that is needed in candidacy, is they don't tell you that the lawn signs are $3.75 to $5 a piece if you want them to be double-sided. That is the bulk of your cost. The other thing that they don't tell you is that all of your printed material, when you do your postcards, all that crap that you guys look at and throw away, because I do the same thing. I get 40, 50 postcards a day from every candidate running for everything. They have spent enormous amounts of money on that in order to get their messaging and to reach the spaces and the corners of the community that they will never physically go to. They also may pay for people to do phone banking for them. They may also pay for a commercial and for billboards. So that is why you have to already commit every year in your mind that you are going to pay for your voice to show up in their candidacy, because it is expensive. And I personally do not want my candidates coming out of their pocket when I know that they have volunteered as tribute for this position. This is not, most school boards are non-paid. Almost probably 95% of them are non-paid. And so they need our support so that they can get into the entry level, which is school board, in order to, one, create opportunities to change who the other school board members are, to create opportunities to change the superintendent and the school culture and the school environment, so that our kids that are experiencing racial trauma is 61%, that we can start to decrease that. Our students here in Michigan experience racial trauma at 61%, more than any other trauma in school, more than sexual trauma, more than violent trauma at 36 and 31%, more than drug abuse trauma, more than any other trauma combined. Our Black students in schools are experiencing racial trauma at 61%. And do not believe for a second that's just in predominantly white schools. They're experiencing racial trauma also in predominantly Black schools, because white supremacy culture does not know any race or any creed. Anybody that wants to be the purveyor of white supremacy culture and the protector of white supremacy culture can join. So please don't think that if your child is in an all-Black school that they are somehow protected and covered in the protection of no racial trauma. That is not the case. So how we start to change that, because I do believe there is an urgency and there's a crisis. If our generation of children cannot function, cannot think, cannot process, cannot focus, because they are under undue anxiety, depression, and stress from racial trauma in schools, then we are now participating in the cultivation of the next generation of traumatized kids in white supremacy culture. That is why we have to participate in what's happening in education. That is why we have to show up. Because if you're not going to go to make sure that kindergartner sees something different in school, so when they turn 18, they become a citizen of the community, to open up a business, to make change happen, to continue the policies that you started, then go sit down somewhere. Because while we are all out here pushing for our new careers and our own businesses and trying to shine on every other platform we possibly can shine on, that kindergartner is being shaped in white supremacy culture as we speak. The Black child and the white child is being conditioned in that space. The Asian child is being conditioned in that space. The teachers are being conditioned and reinforced in that space, who grow up to be the policymakers and the police officers and the judges and the healthcare professionals and the business owners. That's who we are cultivating. So we do not start our fight and our movement and our attention on what is happening at the school level, then again, go sit down somewhere. I'm not saying stop every other thing you're doing, but you got to add education to it. You got to add education to it for the protection of our children and to change and shift the narrative, not just in this generation, but for the next generation. You have to start grooming your, 2039 candidate. He's in kindergarten. He just got born yesterday. You have to start grooming your candidate now. You have to start grooming your judge now by changing his education culture. You have to start grooming your next police officer and chief of police while he's in third grade. So I believe education is the most unifying platform. It is not that expensive to run. Doesn't require as many votes to run, and it will start to take care of and shift the narrative for the urgent crisis that our children are experiencing as they are continuing to be indoctrinated in this space. The second is employment, and the third is through our city council, because I do believe that our housing is the root of some of our other isms. And so that's maybe another show, but that is one area where I believe a part of this blueprint resides. And I do believe that it is an area where we can engage. And so I'm going to stop talking for a minute. If there are hands that are up that I don't see, if there are others that want to add, I'm going to take a drink of water so I can breathe and open up the floor.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. And while you get your drink, I was really going to kind of touch on too. I thought that was so important. How our Black boys, how their environment and their experiences that they're having in school, and how the fact that they're not prepared for the workforce, and how it's important to be, at least like I'll say me, I'm not going to run for candidate at all. That's not me. So it ain't going to happen. But what I can do if I'm not, so some of the things is being really involved in what's really happening and how we can find our lane. That's the best way I'm going to say that, because everybody's different. I know I'm not about to do that. I don't even want to talk because I'm going to say something wrong. So I work behind the scenes. That's my role. Everybody have their own lane. So I just want to say that I don't see any requests. Anybody want to say anything? Because it's so important, because the children are our future. And if we're talking about generational wealth and being able to not become extinct as Black Americans, I think it's so important. And our children is actually the future. It's just not a slogan, but it's really true. So if anybody have anything to say. Here we got somebody requested. Yes, sir. I'm going. My phone is very janky, so hopefully you got that, Raheem. Okay, wait, did it go through?
Yeah, I had a question. Tia, what is the criteria for, just say a group of parents, they get together and they overtake the PTA, maybe it's 5 PTA members and 3 of them are on code. What can they do to change the curriculum? Say if they want to have courses that's dealing with business or something that's sustainable, or garden, or or teaching our true history. How would that look, and how would that work, and is that even attainable in today's environment?
Thank you for your question. So the state, so there's 3 levels of curriculum. There's the curriculum that the federal government requires each state to administer, right? They get federal dollars. There's some things that they are, some main things that they have to do. There are subjects that they have to cover. And then the school board of the state hands down that mandate, right? They go, you are going to get, I don't know, $150 million a year to operate your school in county ABC. We'll just say, let's say Oakland County. You're going to be in Oakland County. We're going to give each school in Oakland County, which there are 27 of them, 29 of them, we're going to give each school $150 million. Okay. You got to cover math. You got to cover, they set the benchmarks of what is the standard. So there's some places where individual citizens can affect curriculum and policy at the state level when you talk about should there be Black education, about like Black history, and integrate it into social studies. The state is only saying cover social studies and cover social studies with these books. Cover social studies and do 2 units. Cover social studies and do testing and use this standardized testing. That's what the state is doing. The county then says, okay, schools, we got this money for you, and we want to make sure that you have teacher development. We want to make sure that you know how to operate your building. We want to make sure that you have the resources and all that available to you. And so the money we got from the state, we're going to help support you. And then the school district itself hires has a board, and that board says, okay, we got to do social studies. So let's hire a superintendent that will ensure that social studies is taught in this district. That superintendent can say, okay, I'm in charge of making sure social studies gets taught, so I choose to have it taught this way. And how I know I want to teach it this way is I have input from the teachers, and I have input from the families, and I have maybe some input from the students, and I take that input, turn it into what the curriculum will look like that gets administered. Like, do we use 5 books or do we use 3 books? Do we use, do we have a guest speaker come in? Do we bring in a specialist like this, more skilled in teaching this particular subject? And then I take that to the board and I say, here's my curriculum plan for social studies. And the board reviews it, they vote, or they may ask for revisions, or they may ask for, them to go back to the drawing board because it's not going to work. But the board is also listening to the community. They're not necessarily listening to the students, but they are listening to the community. And so you have an opportunity before the board votes on something about curriculum in this particular case, or any other thing that they may vote on, maybe building operations or what have you. But let's just stick with curriculum. Before that curriculum is voted on, the board may have several sessions that are open to the community to say, this is the curriculum we're thinking of introducing. What do you think? That is when the PTO, PTA, parents, students, citizens, teachers, whoever can come and say, nah, you're missing some parts. We hear you want to talk about all the dead presidents, but what about Black history? If nobody's there to say that, then all the white folks are sitting around a table going, yep, everything's good. Yep, everything looks good to me. And they push that forward to a vote. And if nobody comes to the school board meeting to talk in opposition of that vote, or to say that I don't agree with this curriculum, and I don't agree so much, I have coalesced 500, 600, 700 people with me, so that when it comes time to vote for you, because you didn't vote for this, you will not have another term. It gets passed, and then when they pass it out and say, this is what we passed, and parents are looking at it for the first time, they are outraged because somehow we can't say Martin Luther King now, we can't say Rosa Parks, we can't say slavery, and we're outraged. But for a whole year, that curriculum was being worked on, and it was being worked on publicly. So the engagement points for things like curriculum or being able to introduce curriculum, they happen every single year. and they happen publicly, but they happen in school spaces. They happen through school board meetings, and then they happen through committee meetings that the board has. Every board picks like a curriculum lead. There's a person that's over like sports. There, like each one of the board members sort of takes on an area that they're going to chair as a committee lead. Even DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, got added to many school boards, and now that's a whole committee meeting, and those are open to the public. They're not broadcast on television. They don't have to be. But they do have to operate as a quorum and still operate as a board, and they still have to allow public comment. Those are on your school calendar as well. You also have to know that it is not open to just parents that have students in the school. Every taxpayer is allowed to come to a public meeting. So do not believe that because your kids are out of school, or you don't have kids in school, or you don't have kids, that you cannot sit in these meetings. You can. Your dollars get spent there every day, whether you participate or not. So that is the opportunity. While they do strategic plan every 5 years, and so they have a 5-year review, and then the plan is usually like a 5-year long plan. Those meetings are public meetings. They're posted on your school calendar. Anybody in the district can go on the district website. I just approved, I'm on 2 school boards. We just approved the school board calendar for 2024 has to go through the school board to be approved. The principals and the superintendent present the schedule for the whole year. And then we vote or make changes if that schedule is not going to work. We vote right then to determine if that's the school schedule, and then it's made public to everyone almost a year in advance. Sometimes even some schools are doing it earlier than a year. But same thing with school budget. Your school budget is reviewed. So the schools get their money. Well, they vote on budget by July 1st. They sometimes don't get their money till August or like the end of August. But most schools in the whole in their calendar year for budget. So tonight we voted on budget, which will come out. We did the final vote on budget and got it approved, which will start in July for the new school year. ESSER funds, they came down the pike. ESSER funds were an oddity because that doesn't usually happen, of course, but the ESSER funds were released in 4 different parts, and they go all the way into 2024. Much of that money is running out and going away. Those were open committee meetings to help the school to determine how to use those funds. The state had a mandate of how they needed to be used, but there was a big, broad understanding. And then superintendents and school boards determined like the line items of where those funds got done. So you do need to get the agenda packet comes out usually 3 to 4 days before a school board meeting. Then you have the same thing for the city council and the library board and all those other boards, which we'll talk about that as well. But that agenda comes out a couple days before, and then you will have an opportunity to review it. We have reviewers in our network, so we all take turns, and somebody does it this week, somebody else reviews it for the next time, so we don't burn anybody out, and we review the packet. That person reports back and says, hey, for the most part, this packet looks pretty good. It's pretty, simple, but like a couple weeks back, the school board, someone tried to change our ethics. They put a proposal to change the ethics in which the school board members were held by. And it was like a hot mess, but they tried to change the way in which we were governed and how we had to govern ourselves. And we didn't tolerate that. We coalesced a lot of community members, but our reader of our packet kind of alerted the rest of us and said, hey, we may have a problem here. We need to get what we call butts in seats. We made the public aware through social media. We called people, we emailed people, we put out postcards so that people would know that they're trying to change the ethical standards of how we operate. And we don't want them to make these changes because they were made in the favor of bad behavior, basically, that would allow the board to do things that they really should not be allowed to do. And so we alerted the community showed up, none of that stuff passed. Why? Because those school board members still want their seat. And when they know that 400, 500, 600, 700 people don't want this, and if they can't physically come to seats, we send letters, we send emails. When that happens, they back off and they vote in favor of the community. But if there's no community to push back and to fight back against these things, especially around Black folks, this stuff it doesn't get passed. So I'll stop there because I see a hand up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's my hand. Thank you. Now, when you say that, because I'm just thinking right now, like a lot of people may want to attend some of these meetings and be a part of that, but we don't know what to say. I'm saying myself specifically. So should we have like something written up? What do you guys think? Maybe we should have like a group. I'm gonna say a male and a female group only because I think it's different. That's just me. But like we can go to a place and we can say, oh, hey, we need to have a meeting. We need to get some butts and seats. We also want to have uniform language, which is important. Because like you're saying, this sounds great, but I'm like, man, wow, what else, can I do? Because I know that I can't be on this. Oh, back this up. You on a school board. Did you have to get voted into that school board? Is that something different that you were saying? You're on mute, Tia Marie.
It's two different school boards. One, I'm on a board of regents with the university, and so that is an appointment from the governor. The other is, and you're nominated, you're vetted, and then the governor's office has to review your eligibility, and then you can be appointed. And then the other school board, yes, you can be voted on. That's usually like your high school, your local public school district. So you have different school boards that you can be on. You can be at a college level. You could be at a K through 12 level. I'm on one of both. You cannot be on two of the same at the same time. So if you have the appointment from the governor, you cannot be appointed in any other office at the same time. And because school board is not the same, it's at a K through 12 level, it's different. And you're not appointed, you're voted in. It's a little bit different.
Got it.
And every state is different, so I'm not going to say it's the same in every state. Every state has like their own little nuances of how you can, or what they may require. You can find out from your clerk's office what your clerk's office or your county election office, what the requirements to run for the different offices are in your community. But to go back to what you were saying before about what to say, so we do have just that kind of network. So I recommend two things. One is we have our African American Family Network, which the name I inherited. It's an organization I took over a year ago, but it's been around since like 2000, I believe, in Michigan. But you can create your own parent network and start talking about, when we say same language, someone will prepare what our talking points are going to be after we have sort of what do I want to say, brainstormed what those talking points need to be. One of the key things that we do is we do not go necessarily in the opposition of, but we go in the affirmative of. So the affirmative is that you give the school what you do want, rather than just saying don't do X. That's great, and there's space to do that. But when you offer what you do want, so I don't need to go and say we do not want you to stop having Black education or Black history or whatever the case may be, or we don't want you to have a bad disciplinary situation in your policies for Black kids. What we say is, here is the type of discipline that we are looking for if you have to discipline children in this district. We want equity. We want it to look like restorative practices, or we want it to look like parents get notified when their kids have been involved in something, all things that schools districts were not doing, but we tell them what we do want them to do. That's number one. Number two, when we have three different layers that you can participate in. You can do butts and seats, which is you just come and you sit silent, but you sit because we need your numbers. We need you to show up so that we have 100 people at a meeting and we pack a room, as opposed to, and you can be 100 people sitting silently. That's what butts and seats are. We don't ask you to come to the podium. Then we have those that do go to the podium, but they go to the podium with our prepared speech. We don't repeat the same speech. We have one long speech, and we all say a portion of it so that we get the entire thread of what it is we're trying to get out. Because you only get about 3 minutes at every school board meeting. Some do 5, but COVID caused a lot to drop down to 3, and some even only give you a minute. So you do have to say what you need to say in a short amount of time. And sometimes that 1 minute may not be enough. So sometimes we may have a 4-page long letter that we are going to present to the board, but we each read a part of it so that we get it all in the time that's allotted. That's all strategized ahead of time. And we do that virtually so that we don't pull parents in directions that need them to always be physically there. We also put letters that they can, all they have to do is sign their name to it and agree to the pledge that we are submitting. And we inundate the school board before that meeting. So that from the time the packet comes out to the board meeting itself, we ask people to send the pre-made letter. Just sign your name to it and submit it to the school board email. And it goes to all of their emails prior to a vote or prior to a meeting or whatever we're trying to convey. The other thing is we do a phone banking campaign. 2 parts to that. The parents that are part of our core group, they're calling out to notify other parents. And then we need those parents to call more parents, and so on and so on. And then the reverse is we take some of those same people and say, now that you know what you know that the board is trying to do, hang up from me and call this main number. That goes to the superintendent. When he gets inundated with calls, we can change and move policy. And then the other thing that we do is, as we talk about building out what this looks like, we need people to participate in our virtual training sessions. So we have people that come on and we teach them, how do we coalesce around a policy? When is the strategy meeting for the strategic plan coming up? How many people can we get to participate in that policy? What do we want to center in that time frame? Those strategic planning meetings are usually 2 or 3 Saturdays in a row. They're usually 2 or 3 hours. So this is not everybody come to it, but it may be your key people that you want to come with their key components of what they are going to talk about. Their group has already strategized to say, we want this on the strategic plan for the next 3 years or the next 5 years. So every level is not necessarily just speaking, but it is engaging at these different points. The other is, because, I come from the rooted, we got the Underground Railroad and things that happened in the network here, that we try to leverage those same kind of communication levels in the way in which we share out what is happening to other people. So get what your Underground Railroad looks like. Does it look like, and again, who those people are. So let me even center that right quick. Anybody can be a purveyor, a preserver, a protector, a perpetuator of white supremacy culture. Anyone. And so if anyone can help preserve and protect and administer and participate in white supremacy culture, if anyone can participate, then anyone can help fight against it too. Anyone can help fight against it, and anyone who is wanting the same goal can fight against it. So when I talk about who the what is in terms of coalescing, when we are talking to people in the community, it is, are you on this tip? Are you on this goal? You're on this goal, you're willing to make the phone calls, you're willing to be butts in seats, you're willing to help change policy, then you are now helping us to eradicate racism, white supremacy culture. And if anyone can participate in doing it, then we can have anyone participate in eradicating it. And I want to be clear about that. Some people are in communities where they are the only Black person. And I don't know how effective, if you don't have people that want to end racism, just like you want to end racism, if you don't have a way to coalesce those groups to fight for the same thing, not that you're fighting for what they want, but they are fighting for what you want the same way. If you get that, take it and run with it. I am not concerned that we are spending so much time talking about who is anti-us and spending energy with anti-us and not building the pro-us group that we need to be building. So let me be clear. Some people are not going to be in a community where, like, we're next to Detroit and we got 650,000 Black folks. That's a luxury that most people, most cities do not have. So do not feel like you cannot be in this fight and not be effective because it's you and two other Black people in the entire town. You can. Your coalition building will look different than some other communities, but you need to build it nonetheless. So I'll just put that out there. But I am less concerned about how we personally identify than I am in how are we actually affecting change and making the necessary investment. People invest in what they care about. And investment and accountability and responsibility is the very necessary core to the blueprint. It is volunteering as tribute to the goal, sacrificing as tribute to the goal, being a community-minded person while functioning in your individual vessel. Community-minded as an individual vessel that understands that you are intrinsically tied to your community in order to thrive as an individual. It is seeking out those who have already stepped into that role and supporting them with all of your might, because they are going to move where you cannot move. They are going to speak where you cannot speak. They are going to do what you cannot do on the days and the times and the actual events that you cannot do. Support them. Let's spend less time talking about what so-and-so over there did and what that group. I was on a call a few weeks back with a group in another city, and they were talking about, well, this group started reparations. And this group is collecting money to help with reparations. And I thought, okay. Well, that's not real reparations. Okay. Well, they can't be, why are they a church and they're doing reparations? Okay. And I just waited till they did all of what the other group was doing. Okay, what are you doing to help with reparations? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, I heard that you knew this group wasn't doing what you wanted them to do, and that group wasn't doing real reparations, and that group isn't real on real. I hear all of that. What you doing on reparations? Well, I'm just saying that they can't be white and start a reparations group. Okay, I agree. Now what? What are you doing? What bills are you putting in front of somebody? Did you ask for reparations? And I say ask in a way of, not that we're going with our hand out begging, but I'm saying, did you tell your policy people and your candidates and the folks that run policy, did you say, hey, how do I get a reparations bill through this committee? How do I get this candidate that I got in my district that is getting ready to go knock on probably 10 to 14,000 doors? How do I get them to start talking about reparations? That's what I mean when I say ask about reparations. I'm not saying ask for the reparations. I mean, are you asking the right people, the right candidates, the right policymakers, the right people who are in your community who can actually affect change and get out and talk to and use their platform for reparations? Have you had the conversation? Or are you just mad that they didn't intrinsically know from the bottom of their heart and their mind that you sitting on the corner of wherever you live want reparations? If candidates do not see that they have constituent support, because this is the contract, they are not moved just by the universe to support you, who they do not know, who has not said what you want in your community, who is not supporting their candidacy. They are not just waking up going, oh, there's a guy on 15th Street that must want me to do reparations. You have to come out and provide the constituent support necessary to see that policy through. And this is not Democratic or Republican. You're not going to hear me mention those very often because it's not about that. You can create a candidate. You can birth a candidate. You create, the constituents create the candidacy and the representative that stands in that place. So I'm for be anti every other party in the planet, be anti all of them, but then go and create the candidacy and insert the candidate that you want that will carry your message, and then support that candidate.
What if the candidate you want to support, do not support what you want. He say they do, but then when they get in office, they don't do it.
So that's why I said candidacy is sustainable. You got a couple things. In order for them to stay in office and to be in office, to affect change, to be the player that they need to be. So, good example. If I say I want to put electric bicycles all through a community because I'm in office now and I want to do some stuff that my community did not want, right? In order for me to get that passed, not only do I need the support of my other partners in the same committee level that I'm at, which means that whoever of their constituents is the loudest will also be able to suffice, right? So like there are 5 committee members. 4 of those committee members got all the anti-bike rack people. Your candidate is going to have a very hard time not passing or getting past bike racks in that community. Okay? Because you as a constituent need to do more work past the candidacy into the sustainability of that position by making your voice still known as to what you want. And then you as a community member need more community members to help support bike racks in all of the city. So if you feel like a candidate is not doing what you want a candidate to do when they get into office, check the way in which they are being supported in that space or not supported. Because in order to stay in office, they still need the very same people that voted them in to support all of the policies that they put up ahead. The other thing is that we cannot vote them in and then go, okay, well, I guess John has it now. He's good. Are you still telling John what you want? Are you still crafting policy and writing letters and letting them know and calling them to your neighborhood and then calling them out when they don't come to your neighborhood? Are we holding them accountable? Because that's what makes sure that they do what they're supposed to do in office. And when they don't, then we reverse the same energy that got them in to concentrating on removing them from office. Because that's the contract. Is there an absolute promise? No, because everybody is human. And while there are terrible humans in the world, there will always be terrible humans in the world. And I'm not saying go get a candidate that says, hey, I'll support what y'all said. I'm talking about candidates that are birthed in your image, that you created, that you gave life to, that you can take life away from. So you may not find it in a candidate that said the right things. You may have to birth that candidate. You may have to create that candidate. You may have to be that candidate. You may have to coalesce a community around the candidate that you created. I have gotten 2 city council members and 2 school board members in office, and we are getting everything that we want. We still got 2 more seats to change. This has been a 6-year campaign because the seats that they run for are only 2 years long. So it's been a 6-year campaign that we knew we had to change 6 seats over 6 years. 2 seats at a time in 3 different areas: school board, library board, and city council. We did city council first 2 years ago. We just got our 2 school board members in, and now we're working for next year for the 2 library board candidates. So, but they are made in our image. We crafted them. We built an entire campaign around them, got them voted in, and I and all of my constituents, we stay on their heads. My people that got me in office, they stay on my head. They come to every public meeting. They send the emails. They write the letters. And if I want to hold that position in 2 years, I've got to meet some of those demands, or really all of them if I can. But I've got to show that I have earned my place. But I was created in their image, right? So I'll pause. I think somebody's requesting to come in, and y'all, please forgive me. I just didn't see your hands. But
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
We have son of Khalid. How are you? I hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing fine. How you doing, Chanel?
Peace to
Peace to you
you.
as well. I,
Please,
I
welcome.
just came up into the room just seeing how things are going. Hollywood in the Blueprint, safe space. I really want to address that piece of, and I know this space has been recorded, so I'm not gonna pull any punches, but I want to address about that piece of dog shit that murdered Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny. um I've seen people talking about, uh how, this there's been like a lot of, I've been I'm sorry. Let me drop down because I might say something that might get me arrested. So because I'm a little mad right now. I'm a little angry. And anytime that anyone is murdered, um there should be, the murderer should absolutely be apprehended and brought to justice. But apparently when it happens to anyone that looks like us, everybody looks the other way. So, but it is what it is.
Well, can I just say something? First of all, thank you for lifting that, and thank you for being vulnerable, open, and anger is definitely an appropriate response. So I think most of us are in solidarity with you in that feeling, in that space. And I started out earlier in the evening just talking about how this, um, continuing to watch these deaths live and in living color is just, it is, I mean, we can almost set our watch to it. So your feelings, I'm sure everyone else's feelings, and I'm not wanting to talk about that. So I just want to be clear. Because it is so new and so raw, and what we did not do is I don't have a counselor on this call. A few other times we have had them. I don't want to begin to open up trauma for anybody, but not have the supports in place to support them in that trauma. And since this was so new and this space was kind of created for something different, I did not address it because, again, if I'm going to address it, I think the responsible thing to do is to make sure that we have some supports, that either people can go offline or people can hear from those professionals that can provide that support. And maybe I will try to see if we can do it. I know we've had Dr. Deborah and some other really skilled social workers and psychologists and people who have dealt with trauma, from violent trauma to racial, sexual trauma. I just believe it is the responsible thing to do is, if you're going to open up that kind of discussion, that you have those supports in place to talk to people about it, either in the space or offline. And we did not have that tonight. So that's why I'm not lifting it as much, because that feeling, those thoughts, those expressions is extremely difficult to manage and extremely difficult to navigate. And I leave that to the professionals. And I believe that there's a space to do that, but I think the responsible thing is to make sure those people are present to help us navigate that.
I'm
And
sorry, Tia Marie. I didn't mean to take it that I just saw it in the jumbotron, so I just wanted to address
yeah,
that. That's the only reason why.
yeah. Yeah, no. Well, some people came after, so I wanted, so I'm glad you lifted it. It was lifted earlier in the Jumbotron. Again, I did not make it the focus of tonight's talk because it is so fresh and so raw, and all of us are feeling some kind of way. But locally, what we have done is always made sure that our spaces had the professional support as well. And I'm not saying nobody can't talk about it, but just know that I am not going to trigger anything for somebody that it may be too soon to
Right.
talk about. You are welcome to talk about it. Anybody on here that wants to talk about it is welcome to, but I am going to be very mindful that I don't have the supports in place to address what you might be feeling in a mindful way. It would just be us talking, and that's fine. But just know I did not have that for tonight, and I can make sure I do that in the future. But that was why I did
Right,
not.
and it's
Did
right,
not.
and it's okay. I just and I don't want to make the room on the focal point around that. I just wanted to address that because, like I said,
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just thankful. Thank you for letting me allow me to speak in the room. I just want to say that I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
glad to be around family. Thank you.
Yeah, and I, again, I think nobody in this room isn't feeling what you're feeling. I think we all, 100%, 110,000% are just beyond tired. I will also lift what I hope it does. I hope, because anger, like, if you look at the Yale Institute for Emotional Intelligence and all of the, things around racial trauma, around the Black experience, everything that you have seen, every feeling, every thought, every outcome is 100% justified. And what we are meant to do with that is these things continue to happen until we literally swarm. And I say swarm because a lot of my references are around the bee, because they are literally the symbol of justice. If we are ready to swarm, volunteer as tribute, again, in the policies and those who enforce the policies. Be anti whatever you want to be anti, but you have to be pro something. And the pro something looks like, how do we ensure that we put the fear of the universe into these candidates, into these police departments, into the citizens that also watch this, that are the purveyors of white supremacy culture? How do we put the fear of the universe into them, that we shift this narrative? See, it's easy for them to be in these spaces because what is the challenge? A march? Some people that are angry enough to blow up some Twitter spaces? People who will have an uprising but got to go to work on Monday? Until we are removing and saying that our narrative today, starting today, our narrative is to shift the expectation of the Black response. Shift the expectation. The expectation is, it is okay and to be live and in color to murder repeatedly, for all the world to see Black bodies. And the only expectation for what comes next is they start putting up barricades in metropolitan cities so they can prepare for the march or the uprising. They institute curfews because they expect us to only be in the streets. When the daytime comes, they're not worried about where we're going to be because they know we're going to work. In the daytime, all the buildings are open, the streets are clear. When we shift the paradigm for what the response will be when you take one of our own out, and we put the fear of the universe into their souls because they don't know if they can go to sleep tonight. When we don't stay in our neighborhoods, but we bus somebody to their neighborhood, to their police department, to their council meetings, to the county council meetings that determines the folks that are in the police department in our city. When we shift the paradigm of the expectation after, because they are not worried about doing what they do because they already know what's going to happen after they do it. We're going to flood the airwaves. We're going to say that this is police brutality while they sit over and learn how to fight like us, how to kill us, how to take our money, how to come in and infuse in our neighborhoods. They are strategizing and shifting the narrative to meet and match our movements every time we move. How are we going to move differently? How are we going to converge on their neighborhood? How are we going to converge on the policies that they use against us? How are we going to converge and they can't choose another police chief in our neighborhood? See, the not voting is fine, but when you don't vote for anything and you don't put your candidate in and you don't support the candidates that you do want in, and you just leave the whole election and the whole thing up to chance, and you don't determine the policies and you don't introduce policy and you don't coalesce your community until somebody dies, they already know what we're going to do. What are we doing different? How are we shaking things up? Who is not sleeping tonight because of what happened? That man went home and slept tonight. The people, because y'all got to remember, we saw who was in the direct circle, but do you know how many other people weren't shown on camera who were watching? Do you know the other footage is going to come out over the next few days of the other people who just picked up their cameras and didn't get bum rushed to stop what was happening, who didn't agitate the system, who didn't agitate the outcome? They already know. We will stand and watch. We're going to pull our phones out. They go, okay, great. It'll be more live and in color. We have to bum rush the narrative. We have to agitate the expectation. We have to converge on spaces and time and place and affect policy in a way that no one is expecting. We have to make sure the chief of police does not rest tonight until justice is there. And while the chief of police is uncomfortable with a march, he's not going to sleep. He's not worried that we're coming to his neighborhood with that march. I love, there were some brothers that went to, and I can't remember the person's house, but they marched down their block looking like Black Panther and with their rifles. They marched down that block where the chief of police lays his head and the judges lay their heads. They don't mind that we march on our block. That's not different. We've been doing that since the civil rights movement. They know we're going to do that. And I'm not saying don't do that, but what are we doing to shift that expectation? The way we shift the expectation of the outcome when you take one of us is that we move differently. We move like an underground railroad. We move like a Black Panther movement. We move like an underground, calculated, intentional, militia-minded, if it need be. We need to move and shift the paradigm on our reaction after these happen. The news already starts to put together, I don't know if y'all noticed it, when they showed clips of what they thought people were going to do after this one, they were showing Black Lives Matter movements from 2 years ago. There wasn't, so I don't know, and I think it was CNN. They were already showing clips from previous uprising. Well, this is what we want to make sure. They're going to barricade the streets just in case they do it. Because look what they did last time and the time before that and the time before that. The news already got the reel. You know, they have the in memoriam reel when somebody died. They already ready 10 seconds later. The person died at 9 o'clock. By 9:01, they rolling the life reel. They were rolling the Black protest reel right after this happened. From the Ferguson, the Black Lives Matter, they were showing previous protests and saying all these communities are bracing for the street protests. What if we sit this one out and then come to their neighborhoods and show up tomorrow morning? What if we say, we don't care about your nighttime curfew, you better start looking at a daytime curfew, because we're going to be everywhere after this happens. I'm just saying. I'm not going to tell people how to protest. I'm just saying. I'm going to pause if there's any hands or requests. I'll pause.
No, and actually there is. I know you guys, it's a great conversation, but it is getting late, Tia Marie. I know you didn't want to be on here very long. And so I know we all have some things to do in the morning. I know you do, very busy. But so one of the things that I've learned today, on Saturday, I'm going to go and visit 2 Black businesses over here where I live at. I'm also going to be a part of the Butts and Seats. I can definitely do that. And then the third thing, I do want to talk about that, but it's going to go really kind of deep because it kind of really correlates to what you're saying about Brother Jordan Neely, where, you know, our Black male children, the, you know, how you're talking about.
Oh, about the 75 kids that we heard? Okay. I can talk about that a little bit. It'll be a little bit, it'll be a major shift, but I think.
But that kind of really correlates into what happened to our brother Jordan, right? Because they're not listened to. No one listened to our children and what they're going through. So they become the same as a child. They become that as an adult. So it doesn't change. And this is what happens. And we need to be a community. Like you were saying earlier, we have to love on each other a way lot more than we have been.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
displaying what we have been displaying. Nikki, I know you at work, but you had said something earlier where you was like, just coming on Twitter could be depressing now, because at this point, like, we're just banging on each other for no reason. You said this and you did that. You hang with this person. It's like, well, damn, I didn't even go through that when I was in middle school, high school. I wasn't part of any of that kind of drama. But to be able to see this now on Twitter as grown adults, and we're still going through this, and we have that was watching George Floyd all over again, except it was non-police, non-law enforcement. He was a white male, and it was on a subway. What's the difference? There's nothing really no different. Replace the person chokeholding him and replace the location. It was George Floyd all over again. It's time for us to do something. All this talking and just constantly yelling and trying to dox each other, and I mean, the time's up. It's up. It's over with. The foolish should be over with. We had a good year and a half of the crap, set a Twitter space set banging each other. I think it's a wrap. So Tim, maybe you want to kind of give you a little quick story, because it was sad, but you don't have to. You can maybe schedule a
Yeah.
space for next week. Yeah,
What,
that's
are
fine.
there any other, before I start, any other hands? Because, like I said, I don't want to be the one
Oh,
to take
yes.
it.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys.
Just make sure if there's anybody
Now,
else who wants to speak.
King Toy, I'm gonna, because we're doing this, so Son of Khalid. Tia Marie requested one speaker at a time, so that way we're all just, everybody get a chance to have their own space there. So I'm going to go with King Troy. I don't know you, King, so I hope you come with something correct. If you don't, you will be dropped. But I'm just putting it out there, okay? So King Toy, I think that's how you say your name. I'm trying to approve you. If it don't work, then I'm sorry.
Yes, how are you all today? This is my first time on Twitter Spaces in a very long time. I'm normally on Clubhouse, but to this title, I realize, well, one, I would say I'm neurodiverse, high functioning on a spectrum. I think way differently than a neurotypical world. Being the future mind, I realize there's one big issue before you even speak about this subject, because this is something people want to speak about, but then go back to doing their everyday lives once things die down, and almost wait for the next incident to come where it deals with someone outside of the Black culture offending us. Within the culture, I grew up in an all prestigious white community, and I moved back to the city, and I realized that the issue isn't racism, it's racism within our own culture. I realized there's no love, and when there starts to be love is where we could genuinely change. Rap music is the biggest reason for why we have this life that we're living, because the neurotypical world lives on a following aspect, to where if they think it's cool, I'm going to do it. I just posted a link in a chat by Crazy Bone, which basically I just learned of recently, which speaks on how he was in a meeting, non-disclosure meeting, to where some people left the meeting before uh, they can even engage, but he actually stayed to see what the big surprise was. And it literally talked about how in the 70s they created these prison systems to fill them, and they wanted to have the rap music be the narrative of our culture. The sad thing is, we could talk about this, but if we talk about someone in our own hood, snitches get stitches, or don't talk about that, or we could disrespect one another, and it's a social norm. I think we need to start really concentrating on our own community and start doing protests within our own community the same way we do whenever a police kills someone.